We have sort of a major issue with the car right now. And before I kind of dive into what it is, we need to go grab something, so let's go on a little trip. As I mentioned before, we have a big issue, and that issue is that I'm tired of cleaning these effing wheels. It does not matter how many times I go and wash it. Immediately after, brake dust, brake dust. Washed the car yesterday. Immediately after, brake dust. It's horrible. It sucks to clean, especially on the beadlocks. They're so intricate, you cannot, there's not a good one-size-fits-all wheel brush. So not only that, but also car's 40,000 miles on it. It's probably time to replace the pads anyways. So I ended up going with a ceramic pad this time. I've never tried this brand before, but we'll actually see how it works out together. I went with the Hawk ceramic pads for the front and rear and got new brake fluid as well, upgrading to the 5.1. Yeah, wanted to get this new jack. It's actually on sale right now. I got it for 120 bucks. I have this blue one over here that I've had for 4 or 5 years, never given me any issues, so I just got the same one that I got for that. I wanted to jack the car up on 4 corners so I could bleed all the brakes at once and not have any interruptions jacking up, taking off a wheel. I'm just gonna get this open, all set up, and get the car up in the air so we can start this. Put some towels down so you don't drip any brake fluid. Just got this area prepped. About to take off all the wheels, and then make sure that you turn off your parking brake. Turn the parking brake off so you can actually access the rear brake pads. They're not gonna be clamped down on there. I also forgot to mention, when you're doing the rear brakes, you're gonna wanna download an app like Bimmerlink that can deactivate the rear parking brake, or else you're just gonna have to take that off, and there's like a socket inside there that you can turn. It's way easier just to do it on the app. Just have a OBD2 connector. I use the MHD universal one. Go into Bimmerlink. I'll put up a video on how to do it here. We're gonna start on the front brakes here. You're gonna wanna grab something to punch out the pins. I'm gonna do something like this. I've had good luck using an Allen key before in the past, so I'm just gonna continue doing that. Best way I found to do it is just to grab an Allen key and hold it with a pair of pliers. Put it in the pinhole. Just tap it all the way back. See it start to come out like that. Repeat the process on the top one. And you'll actually see these pins start to come out the back. I wouldn't grab on these. I just continue to push out the same way. Get a longer Allen. This is the one I was using before. This is the same one, but just longer. And continue to push all the way back. Try not to grab on these. You don't want to mess up those. And once you push this one all the way through, the pin will come out the back, and you just do the same for the bottom one over here. And while we're in here, might as well give it a good clean. The new pads that I got are ceramic, so they'll produce way, way less brake dust. Which will be nice for cleaning. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm going to be sticking in a flathead through the rotor holes. Just find there's veins inside the rotor, and we're basically going to be counter holding. Feels like one right there. Might need a larger one. And once you made a little separation in between the rotor and the pad, I just grab something to grab onto the actual pad and shake it back and forth to loosen it up. There's adhesive on the back of the pads that sticks onto the piston, which makes it incredibly difficult to take off. So you have to break it loose. Just grabbing it and shaking it back and forth until they get loose. I should be able to pull both pads out at the same time. I actually had quite the time getting these pads out. There's, on the back of the pads, there's sticky material. So I was able to pry them apart, but the pads were not coming out of there. So it was a mixture of prying, and then I ended up fitting a razor blade in between the piston and the pad and cutting the adhesive. You have to be very careful when you do that though, do not hit this rubber boot. You will have a bad time if you do that. You will need to get another seal. I didn't hit any of them on mine, but just to give a heads up, that is a possibility. So the old pads are out. New pads are right here. I'm gonna get my hands cleaned off so I can handle these, but I'll just be doing the reverse of putting these pads in. This clip will be going in between them. You can't take this clip out unless the pads are out, so yeah, we'll just do the reverse, get the new pads thrown in there. Just to give a side-by-side comparison, this is the old pad, obviously. New pad. This one actually has a slit in the middle of it, which I'm not sure why this one doesn't. But there's definitely more material on this one. So it'd be interesting to see what that does. I'm also kind of curious as to why the aftermarket pads don't have these weights that the stock ones do. There's no orientation for these. I will be putting some disc brake quiet on the back of the pads. You can see on here, this is where the pistons make contact. So I'm just gonna kind of make circles on all of these, kind of the same area. I don't need to do the entire thing, but I will be applying this. It's worked for me in the past. It's not required, but. Moving on to the rear here, got 14 millimeter bolt up here and a 14 millimeter bolt right here. Gonna crack both of those loose. This slides out and then the caliper should be able to come off after that. And I actually just got a call that the beadlock rings are done. So I might have to take a break up here. Might have to take a break here and go pick those up. Take out both of those bolts. So it's a good idea to have some bungee cords or zip tie to hold up the caliper when it comes off. Pull off your sensor. Okay, there we are. And then you can just take the pads out from here. I actually got a call that the beadlocks are done. So I'm gonna run up there and grab those really quick. Excited to see how they turned out. Probably reveal the color in this video now that I'm getting them. Just push this piston back in. I have like a master set from Icon for the rear calipers. Once you push this piston back in, some kits will come with replacement of these metal flanges. Probably a good idea to replace them. I don't have any right now, so I'm just gonna re-lube here, here, and then on the backs of the pads. And then I'll put the caliper back on, put those two 14 millimeters back on, torque it to spec, and call it a day. Got the caliper back on. Just gotta tighten down these 14 millimeters. This brake dust is getting everywhere, all over my face, but we are almost done. It is time to bleed the brakes, so I'm gonna get all this stuff cleaned up, and then we'll start the bleeding process. Moving on to the driver's side of the vehicle. Take off the cap of your brake fluid reservoir. Use something like this to suck out all of the old fluid. Get as much of the old fluid out of there as you can. Save yourself a bunch of time. Be very, very careful not to drip this on your paint. If you do get any on your paint, you need to get it off immediately. It will destroy your paint. And now once most of that is out, or all of it is out, be safe. Use a funnel there. and pour in your new fluid. Oh, oh. Doesn't quite take the full bottle. All right, let's see if we can't get that fluid level down a little bit by starting on the next step. If you've never bled brakes before, the general concept is to start the furthest away from the master cylinder, which would be the passenger rear, and then we'll be moving to the driver side rear, and then passenger front, driver side front, and we'll go over the steps for each side really. It applies to both sides, so I won't bore you with watching all four, but do the passenger rear. It's the same for the driver side rear. And then we'll go over the passenger front, same for the driver side front. So let's get started. The kit I'm gonna be using is from Harbor Freight. It's no secret that I like Harbor Freight stuff, at least for a weekend job. I don't work in a shop, so I don't need the highest quality. You can go out and buy a nice pressure bleeder for 60, 70 bucks probably. This was less than 20. So this is the one I'm going to be using for now. Pretty basic. This will catch the fluid. This goes onto the nipple that will be breaking loose here. And then this creates a vacuum, pulling the fluid through the system rather than some of the other ones push fluid through the system. This one's pulling. This is the 11 millimeter that we'll be using to crack open the bleeder. And the bleeder is right here. Right where my fingertip is. This is the bleeder. It'll have a cap on it. It'll have this black cap on it. And you just put the hose on there, and we'll be squeezing the trigger after we break it loose to get fluid to flow out of there. So it's on there. I have the wrench that close into the wrench so I don't strip anything. And then I'm just gonna pull a little bit of a vacuum here, pump it up to, say 15. We'll start off with 15. We'll break this loose. And the fluid's actually getting captured in here. We'll go check on our fluid level. It's gone down some. Can help to have a flashlight on there so you can see the actual level. See it better on there. So we're gonna continue to go. Don't let it get below that minimum line. So keep an eye on it, or if you have someone helping you out, make sure that it doesn't get below that minimum line, or else you can introduce more air into the system. It can actually help to press on the brake pedal. Of course, I realize day of editing this video that the rest of the footage was deleted or it's just gone. I don't know where it went. So gonna try and do my best to recap what I was saying in those clips as far as I can remember. And hopefully this video isn't a complete shit show. In the previous clip I mentioned pressing on the brake can help push some of the fluid through there. What you want to make sure of before you start pressing on the brake is to go back into Bimmerlink, the same process that I showed earlier on the screen sharing, and then you're going to want to deactivate the parking brake service mode, which will allow you to, press the brake and get the fluid through there. I think that was the original reason why there wasn't that much fluid going through there. It's because the piston was being held open, but all the fluid that I got out of there, I'm pretty sure was just in the caliper. After that, I did end up ditching the Harbor Freight vacuum bleeder and just doing it the old school way, having someone help you out and press on the brake while you crack it open, close it when they let off, build up pressure that way, which really sped up the process. That pressure bleeder was taking forever. And lesson learned, I'm not afraid to admit when I was wrong. That one product from them was not the best. I won't be using it again. I did end up using all 3 bottles, or it's just under the 3rd bottle. But really quickly, I wanted to go over the front bleeding process because it's a little bit different from the rear. There's two bleeders on the front calipers, so let's take a look at those. So yeah, as I mentioned before, there's 2 bleeders. There's an inside one here and an outside one here. Same concept as working furthest away from the brake reservoir to the closest. You're gonna wanna start on the outside one and then move your way onto the inside one. The inside one will be much clearer than the outside one because you've already started to get some fluid going through there. But yeah, outside, then inside, that applies on the driver's side as well. Furthest away to the closest. Once you've bled the brakes, double check that your reservoir's topped off. Very carefully go for a drive. Don't romp on it. Don't go 100 miles an hour the first one and slam on the brakes to see if they work. Just use common sense and play it safe. They will feel pretty spongy at first until you start to get that bedding material off of the pad there. I personally followed the Hawk recommended break-in steps, which they recommend doing multiple hard stops from like 40 miles an hour, then 60 miles an hour. Just follow your pad recommendation, the manufacturer recommendation. And then I've been good to go ever since then. Pads feel fine. They do still produce a little bit of brake dust, but not nearly as bad as the stock pads, which I'm okay with. And of course I spoke it into existence. In this video, actually, earlier I said, oh, I've never had issues with this jack. I have this blue one over here that I've had for 4 or 5 years, never given me any issues. Never given me any issues. And this piston started sticking. If you go, compress it, this one will sometimes stick and you don't get the full pressure of anything, which is kind of annoying. So I'm kind of glad I got the other one now. I don't really feel safe using this one. I'm gonna have to do a full service on it, but it lasted this long, so. But if you've made it this far, I think you guys kind of deserve a little sneak peek of the drag pack. It is currently on the car, and I think it looks killer. Shout out to A&M Powder Coating. They killed it with this one. The color is almost perfect. It was perfect before the clear coat. Had to do clear coat, it made it a tad bit darker. You can't really tell though. So what we're working with is these right here. Again, running the Nitto MT440 R2 in the rear. It's paint matched beadlock ring with the 826M style beadlocks. And that's gonna be front and rear. And I think you killed it. Definitely one of the more controversial mods I've done. A lot of people hate it. I've had a lot of people reach out on Instagram and just dislike it, but oh well. It took a second for it to grow on me myself. Wasn't super big fan of it at the beginning, but it's starting to grow on me. So yeah, one final look here. Got the MT440 G2s on the front, R2s on the rear. Let me know what you guys think. That's gonna do it for this week. By this time next week, I'll be heading back from Texas. So there's a chance that the upload next week gets a little bit delayed. It might be a Tuesday upload. Just because I will be driving all day back from Texas on Monday. Wish me luck. Me and David's shop are turning it up as we speak, going through revisions all day today. So we should be pretty competitive in Texas. So excited for that. Anyways, you guys have a good week. I'll see you guys in the next one.